Okay, so this whole story kicks off with what seems like a pretty isolated incident at a port in Florida. But stick with me, because it opens up this massive, complicated can of worms involving border security, our phones, and, basic individual rights.
So here are the raw facts. You've got 4 crew members, a really serious accusation, and then 0 criminal charges. Nothing. This happened just this past April at Port Everglades in Florida. These crew members got detained, accused of having child sexual abuse material, and then, poof, they were deported. They never saw the inside of a U.S. courtroom. And that stark outcome is exactly what we need to get into.
So what is the full story here? Well, it's not simple. You've got 2 totally different versions of what's happening, you've got a pattern of these incidents popping up, and a huge question at the center of it all that has people, especially crew members, really worried. So let's dig in and break it all down.
All right, first up, let's zoom in on that specific incident at Port Everglades, because that's what really pushed this whole thing back into the spotlight.
Okay, so here's the official breakdown from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, we'll just call them CBP. It starts with a routine screening. 4 crew members get detained, their phones get searched, and CBP says they admitted to having, child sexual abuse material, or CSAM. But here's the twist. Instead of going to trial, their Seaman visas were just revoked. They were processed for removal, basically deported. And that was it. No prosecution. And to top it off, officials kept the cruise line and the nationalities of the crew completely under wraps.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. That whole Port Everglades thing, it's not just some random one-time event. No way. It's actually the latest piece of a much bigger and honestly pretty troubling pattern that's been building for a while now.
And to really get the scale of this, you have to look at the numbers. Check this out. 55,318. That's how many times CBP searched electronic devices just last year. That's a huge jump, almost 18% from the year before. So these kinds of inspections are definitely becoming way more common.
And if we narrow in on the cruise industry itself, the number is pretty staggering. We're talking about an estimated 200-plus crew members who've been accused of having CSAM, and that's just in the last 2 years. That's not a small number, It clearly points to something recurring, something systemic happening at U.S. ports.
And this timeline really lays it all out. Look, you can see these incidents are just happening again and again. You've got a huge deportation of over 100 Filipino crew members back in July 2025, then a few more from a Carnival ship in August, another 4 in November, and then the Port Everglades case in April 2026. The pattern is crystal clear every single time. There's an accusation, a visa gets revoked, and the person gets deported. No criminal charges. It's the same playbook over and over.
So this all leads to the million-dollar question, right? Why? Why is this happening? And to get any kind of answer, we really have to try and see it from the official side, from CBP's point of view. What's their justification for these searches? And more importantly, why are they choosing to deport people instead of prosecuting them?
Okay, so here's the official line from CBP. They're basically saying, hey, look, searching electronic devices at the border, this is not new. This is something we've been doing for a long time. They see it as an absolutely critical, totally lawful part of their job, protecting the border and enforcing all kinds of laws. For them, it's just fundamental to their mission.
And they're not just looking for one thing. The scope of these searches is huge. They're trying to identify terrorist activity, stop drug and human smuggling, uncover visa fraud, and find inappropriate stuff related to kids and even enforce intellectual property rights. For CBP, your phone or your laptop is a potential source of intelligence on all of these fronts. It's a cornerstone of their security strategy. But, and this is a huge but, there is a completely different side to this story. If you talk to crew members or to advocacy groups like the Filipino Workers Center who represent them, you get a version of events that sounds, nothing like what CBP describes.
And this quote right here, it cuts right to the chase. You have Soriano Versosa from the Filipino Workers Center talking about a past case, and he's saying they weren't shown any evidence of it. All of the workers absolutely denied having anything to do with it. That's a powerful claim. It's the core of their argument, accusations without proof.
So the advocates have actually mapped out what they say is the typical process, and it's pretty troubling. It goes like this. First, your phone is taken. Then an accusation is made against you, but often you're not even shown the material they're talking about. Next, and this is a big one, you're allegedly asked to sign documents that acknowledge the accusation. You ask for a lawyer for your embassy, they say that's denied. And just like that, boom, your 10-year Seaman visa is canceled and you're put on a plane back home. Your career just gone.
So you see, we're left with 2 completely opposite realities.
On one hand, CBP says this is a necessary, lawful tool to protect the country. On the other hand, the advocates are saying, hold on, this is a system that completely bypasses due process. It denies people the basic right to see the evidence against them or to get legal help. These two stories just don't line up.
And that huge conflict brings us back to the most confusing part of this whole thing. I mean, if these accusations are as serious as they sound, and they are very serious, then why aren't these people being prosecuted? Why are they just being sent home instead of standing trial in a U.S. court?
The numbers really tell the story here. Take a look. Over the last 2 years, we're talking about more than 200 accused crew members. Out of that group, how many do you think were prosecuted in the U.S.? Only about 20. The rest, a massive majority, over 170 people, were just deported. No trial, no judge, no jury.
And let's be really clear about what that means, because the difference between prosecution and deportation is night and day. Prosecution, right? That means you get a criminal trial. You have access to a lawyer, the evidence has to be presented and scrutinized. It's a whole process with checks and balances. But this kind of deportation, it's just an administrative action. There's no trial. The consequences are instant and frankly life-shattering. Your visa is destroyed, you lose your job, and your ability to work in your chosen field is pretty much over, just like that.
So, that's where we land. What are we actually looking at here? Is this some form of swift justice? An efficient way to enforce the law and protect the border by quickly removing people without all the cost and hassle of a criminal trial? Or is this a system that's working in a legal gray area, one that's making decisions that ruin people's lives without any of the scrutiny or oversight a real court would provide? That, right there, is the big, unresolved question at the very heart of this whole controversy.